raise their hand or request to speak. There's a 3-minute timer for each public comment at this time. So whomever has anything, if you want to raise your hand on Zoom or in person, actually, as well.
Hey, this is Karthik. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good evening. I'm Karthik from the Hills Observer. I'm here today as a neighbor, a parent, and someone who truly cares about this community. I have real concerns about the proposal to give $6,000 of taxpayer money to help fund a fireworks event organized by the club, a private for-profit entity backed by private equity. They already collect mandatory dues and make money through their operations. I don't see why public funds should be used to support their event. What's more troubling is the lack of clear safety plan. No details about fire risk, crowd control, cleanup, or insurance have been shared publicly. That's a big deal, especially in a community like ours with dry conditions and a lot of wildlife. Speaking of wildlife, fireworks aren't just a spectacle. They scare our deer, birds, and other animals. Fireworks terrify them. We have seen deer dart into roads, injure themselves, or abandon fawns out of fear. We live in a peaceful neighborhood, and this kind of disruption puts both animals and people at risk. And lastly, if anyone on this council has a connection to the club, I think it's only fair to be transparent about that before voting. The community deserves decisions made in open without conflicts of interest. This isn't about being anti-fireworks, it's about doing what's fair, what's safe, and what's right. I request the council to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Andy Kenny. I'd like to use my 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
I'm adamantly against supporting the club with the fireworks proposal as well. I would recommend whoever's working with the club remind the club of their wonderful drone event in prior years, and it's a much safer and significantly easier thing to do. I'd highly encourage them to talk about doing their drones again, especially since within the community fireworks aren't allowed. So I'm against changing our rules to allow the club a one-time exemption, as well as money coming out of funds that could be used for better things for our community than a fireworks show. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Laura Sexton.
Hey, Laura.
Hi. When I did the survey that you did, I said, no, I was not supporting this. There are probably a variety of reasons, but my primary reason is the short timeline. It was less than 3 weeks that I think from when we received the survey to the July 3rd proposed fireworks. I just think we need more time to have a thoughtful discussion about whether this is a good idea, if, whether we do spend money, a whole variety of reasons. So my recommendation is to vote no, but it's primarily based upon the lack of lead time to have a real thoughtful discussion, pros and cons about having a firework display. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, feel free to jump in.
Hi, this is Mitch Sargent. I'd like to speak on this.
Go for it, Mitch.
Hey, so I am on the Parks and Rec committee, and I had the opportunity yesterday to hearing the club's side of things. I was pretty middle of the road and wasn't sure how I felt about this idea. However, a couple things that I do like about the idea of this is sort of setting the precedent of working with the club more. I think too often we've got completely separate events that are duplicates of already existing club events. And I think it divides our community versus pooling resources and bringing together and having truly successful events. So with that aspect, I like this idea a lot. And some other points that have been brought up about the short timeline, they're correct. Like, I love the idea of having a drone fireworks display instead of actual fireworks. but I don't know that the timeline is quick enough for something like that. So, I'm more inclined to vote yes on this, just because in good faith, it could set a precedent for future co-hosted events, with the club and bring a more united and cohesive community, which I am very much for. So with that being said, I think there are, some errors and mistakes with what's going on, but I don't think anything is too dramatic to not move forward with a yes. So my answer is yes.
Thank you, Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone else has comment, I know we have Ray, we have Kelly as well, and then Tom and Greg.
I can go. This is Kelly. I'm along the same lines as Laura. I think the timeline, I don't understand why we would want not to take a measured approach when you have live explosives in a neighborhood as densely populated as we have around our golf course. There's not very many spaces that I can visualize that would be an easy, oh, heck yeah, that would be a perfect spot where we can control everything. So without seeing like the fire marshal's proposal or agreement, I mean, do we have things like that secured? I mean, is that something that we get to view, or is that something that only the club gets to see? That causes me a little concern. The liability insurance, even if the club covers it, I don't know. I don't live along the golf course, so it's not really a concern of mine, but I would think that if I did, I'd be worried about my property because there's probably not a lot of riders, including fireworks, into people's, home insurance. So that would be something I would be worried about at that aspect. And then also, I don't really care for the club, asking money for us and not profit sharing, right? If we're going to open this up to Lakeway, like, why are we not also making money off of this? Because we're opening up our whole entire neighborhood to this. Would there be like membership only areas, or how do you run something like this? And those are all questions that I think could be worked out with a more meaningful timeline, something where we could actually think things through. In my past, I have run big events, and I just don't think we're quite prepared for this this time around. And then what Karthik was saying with the animals, I do think, I mean, this neighborhood has been here for 30 plus years, and we have a lot of wildlife, and introducing, fireworks into that environment, I don't really know why we would do that. We just lowered the speed limits, to be extra safe, and now we're going to invite the whole, like, all of Lakeway over here and, invoke a lot of chaos. So I'm kind of a no. I mean, I would not be a permanent no, but I just don't think we have enough details and enough of a plan. I think some things can be great ideas. They just don't always have to be enacted, in a fast timeline. In my history, I've never put an event like this together with this short of a timeline without lots and lots of experts. And I've just heard a lot of, not dismissing our talents as a neighborhood pool, but a lot of people that maybe haven't done this before. And there's just a lot of pieces to consider. So I guess if the club is taking all the liability, then maybe, but I would still be very invested in what the fire marshal has to say, because the resources alone is pretty significant. And then also, like, what kind of fireworks are they launching? Like, what brand? Where's this company coming from that's putting this together? It somehow has availability 2 weeks out. There's a lot of, I've just done this a lot, and so it raises a lot of red flags for me. So,
Thank you, Kelly. Ray, Greg, or Tom, if you guys have anything to add.
Hilda.
Oh, and Hilda. Sorry, I didn't see it up there.
Hey, y'all, this is Ray. I guess I'll just echo the sentiment around a more cooperative and engagement with the club. I think that's long overdue. This community was built as a golf course first and houses second. And so I think that level of cooperation needs to be restored to this community. I think the opportunity of having a fireworks display for the Hills for club members, I think that's great. I guess I'm questioning a public fireworks display. I think the city of Lakeway does one on Lake Travis, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if you can expand on what the the plans of that are. I don't know why we would need to invite the entire Lakeway community into the hills. Yeah, I heard about somebody said something about a survey. I don't think I got a survey, but I think it's a great idea. Whether it's timed right, that's one thing. Community animals, that there's fireworks that are going to be shot off all over the place around where we live. I do live on the golf course. I watch them from my balcony. It's quite pleasant. So I'm in support of the concept. I don't know if manifesting it in this short a time is possible. If it was, that'd be fun.
Thank you. Hilda, or I see Gary Roth join. Gary Roth, if you want to make a public comment, we're allowing, there's 3-minute public comment period right now if you'd like to say anything. If not, that's fine.
No, we have nothing to say. We're just listening.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, so if I'm stepping on anybody, just let me know. So kind of regardless of wherever this lands, just looking at it from a POA perspective, not saying this is a resident at all, but fireworks are prohibited per our governing documents. So if we need to make any consideration for that, just ask that there's some runway for the consideration of the board of directors to make any decisions on that front. And then just in terms of more of a macro level, any large non-resident crowd engagement event, et cetera, would need coordination with the POA for our guards, our roadways, parking. So, think what we do with the Turkey Trot and Lake Travis Education Foundation and the club. Great coordination on that. Off-site buses, RFID tags for those buses, parking, their extended guard hours and coverage. There's directing traffic, et cetera. So, simply recommend and request that the POA be kept in mind as we go through whatever decisions are being made this evening and kind of go forward as well. Again, not opposed or for the fireworks, but just want to make sure the POA is tightly coordinated with the other entities here.
Thank you, Tom. Hilda or Greg? I think you might be the only ones left.
I'm good. Just
Okay.
listening. Good evening, all.
This is Laura Sexton. Could I make one more comment?
Yes.
Okay. This is based upon what somebody else had said. I forget who it was, but this again falls into the timeline. I like the idea of pursuing the drone aerial display because that would deal with or address a lot of the concerns that I've heard. And again, I like the idea of perhaps trying a cooperative approach with the invited club. I just don't think we have enough time to pull it all together. Again, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. I would actually ask at this time that we move on to business items. I think what we should actually do first is do item 4B, which is discussion and approval of an ordinance granting a temporary waiver of City Code Ordinance Section 8.02.00A for the property located 1 Glenwood Court, legal description Lot A, Hills of Lakeway, Phase 4, the amended plot of lots 360-361, subject to City Council imposed safeguards for the prevention of oak wilt. Whomever wants to actually, I guess we should.
If you want, I'll move approval of the item, and if we get a second on that, then I'm happy to discuss it and give some background.
And then Tommy would probably like to make go for it.
So I'll move approval of ordinance 2025-014, which approves the item 4B to grant the temporary waiver of City Code Section 8.02.008 for the particular property name there, subject to City Council imposed safeguards for the prevention of oak wilt.
Tom, would you like to make any public comment regarding the
second?
Yeah, she did.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
she did.
I'm sorry. So I'll just say,
Yeah.
maybe to kick it off then, Kevin, I'm the one that asked Kevin if we could bring this item onto the agenda for this meeting. So, and I had sent the council a couple of days ago some background information about it. Just in summary, of course, we have an ordinance in our city code as part of our Oak Wilt ordinance that prohibits the cutting of oak trees between February 1st and June 30th. Mr. Kokins had contacted me recently to ask about whether he could cut down some oaks in a lot where he is currently building a house. And I think I sent everybody a couple of pictures of the current construction site for the property. And I had explained to him that because it's part of the city code, it would require a city council action to waive the provisions of that code section with respect to that property. And I told Mr. Kokins if he would like, that I would be happy to bring an item before the council in this meeting to make that request to the council that we provide a waiver to allow him to go ahead and cut the oaks now before July the 1st. And maybe Mr. Kokins probably got better information on this, but my understanding is because of where he is in his construction project right now on the subject property, he needs to move this forward before July the 1st. Did I get it right, Kokins? Correct. Okay. Anything you'd like to say about the matter?
Well, I mean, hopefully you guys vote to allow me to get going. I've lost a lot of money on this project because I basically shut down. But really, I think even more importantly, I think for the next person, which could very well be you because I have a lot next door, this is the only place that I know of anywhere in the area. First of all, the ordinance, it's not really clear. I mean, it says cutting or trimming. Unlike the HOAs, Lee sent it over to me. HOAs has a whole section that discusses removal for new construction, but yours falls short. And so you have somebody like me that's coming along trying to make both entities happy, which I guess you have to do. One says, I'm perfectly fine to go ahead and do it. Yours actually really doesn't say, I would argue. It says trimming or cutting, nothing about removal. So if I remove those trees, what happens? But I was a little bit worried about it because Lee was pretty adamant about it. Angie was at the job site telling people not to touch an oak tree, which is kind of strange to me. But I think that you should just really look at, to make it simpler for the next person, the next applicant, the next person that wants out a pool or maybe tree in the way, whatever, addition, new construction. You should just look at the HOA's information on their guidelines and at least try to align them. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't. But if you go anywhere around here, I promise you, Westlake, City of Austin, Lago Vista, any neighborhood that you want, this is the only place that I've heard of ever, in 40 years of doing this, that says you cannot remove a tree for new construction. It's shocking. I had no idea. And I've built, I don't know, 10, 12 houses in Mills. Never ever heard of this before.
May I ask, just for my clarification, how you would go about removing a tree without cutting it in any way?
Well, when you remove it, it's just pulled up by the roots and taken out. So, I mean, your ordinance really says which Lakeway and all these other places say. I mean, yeah, if you want to go out like, prune your trees or something, then you shouldn't touch them, February 1st to end of June. But it's a whole different story for removal in every entity, every municipality.
I will say, Mayor Pro Tem, I think Mr. Kokins does raise a good point that, both city and the POA regulate oak wilt. And our kind of regulatory schemes are a little bit different in the sense that the POA does have a specific section relating to removal of trees. And it may be appropriate for us somewhere down the line to kind of compare what we have to what the POA has and see if we can kind of make sure that they're lined up a little bit better than they may appear to be. I think based on our advice, and we did address this with the city attorney, I think we're comfortable that our ordinance does prohibit the cutting down of an oak tree as part of the current wording in it. But if we did want to consider taking a different route like the POA has with respect to tree removal rather than tree trimming, we could do that in the future by considering an amendment to the city code. But I don't think that's before us this evening.
I'd like to allow Hilda I see her raising her hand there to make public comment.
Well, since I was writing that ordinance to try to halt the, cutting of trees in the hills, since we do have oak wilt, we have had several outbreaks that we have had to work to contain, that I think I can add a little bit of, background here. And by the way, you cannot take a tree down without cutting it. So you're just playing word games here. We worked on that very long and hard, and also worked with other entities on their oak wilt ordinances when that was written. So I kind of take a little offense to your claiming that this is just bizarre and out of the left field, because it was highly researched and worked on when it was written and put in place, and it's there for a reason. There are ways to remove oak trees that you have to cut down, below the ground level, and then cover it with dirt. And then the tree, according to POA rules, has to be replaced. And I don't hear anything about any arborists being involved here, or any work that might help contain any possible outbreak. So that's just kind of my thing. We're 2 weeks away from the 1st of July. What's your rush? But I am adamantly opposed to granting any kind of variance for this kind of reason. If it were an emergency, yeah, I would think about it. But we have to think about setting precedents here. What about the next guy that comes along? And it would be my recommendation as the old oak wilt person here in the hills to not grant any variances except in extreme emergency. That's my story, and that's all I have to say.
I have the result on that. Well, not with respect, not completely accurate. I mean, we just cleared 2 lots in the last 60 days in Lakeway. Trees, oak trees, everything. There's no cutting it down at the stump and then covering it with dirt. This is going where a slab's going. We're not moving the trees because we don't like them. They absolutely cannot stay. I try my best to save any tree on the job site. It gets completely pulled up by the roots and removed. It just kind of stump, covered with dirt, and get the slab over. Not how it works. And then then we are following the HOA's guidelines, which if I can just, I actually printed some forms out and I forgot in my house. But we are following the HOA because they were responsible to protect against oak wilt. And they have this provision. You sent it to me. Live oaks and red oaks trees are to be removed from the property, and the builder must remove the trees within 5 days. The requirement stated in 6.6, which refers to the job sites and your landscaping plan, everything must be complied with for each tree felled that day. So there is a responsible provision to help out with oak wilt. They have to be off the job site within 5 days. So that's why they put that in there, because they're worried about oak wilt. They're rightfully so. Lakeway has oak wilt, but Hilda is not correct with the neighboring entities. We just cleared 2 lots in Lakeway, one in Rock Hollow, one in Old Lakeway in the last 60 days.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if I could ask Mr. Copkins to address the point about the sort of the timing. We are 2 weeks away from July 1st when you'd be able to cut it under.
Well, as we discussed earlier,
yeah,
my per day burn is very, very high. And I've already been held up 3 weeks because when did you first send that email to me? And I've been concerned about it, and I was just wondering, what the right thing to do on my end was. Do I follow HOA? Do I follow Village? You're not aligned. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks is an enormous amount of money, and it's already not going too well for a whole bunch of other reasons, including HOA and Village stuff. And the other thing is, why you have to correct this. This could cost somebody 4 months, and then by the own testimony of the The mud, they have a really rigorous engineer. They look at your plan for drainage. We passed it in I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. They said usually it takes people 6 months. So if you hit it just wrong and you don't get your plan approved, quickly with the mud, and you run into this village opinion for Oakville, you can not be able to build anything you want if it goes for a year. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
If you don't mind, I might also state that I'm not guided by opinions in my vote. I'm guided by our ordinance and the laws that have been set to protect the health and safety of our community. Given that this ordinance has been in existence for quite some time, we are also at a stage in our community where it is very well built out. So these cases of removing trees for new construction will be few and far between.
Yeah. If I could just reiterate, this is the city council meeting and we're talking about an ordinance, not an opinion. I just want to reiterate what Sarah just said.
Can you walk us through actual removal and how that works when you do that?
Yeah, the machine tractor pushes the tree over, roots, everything, gets thrown in the dumpster, hauled off within 5 days for the HOA.
Are there typically any part of the root system left?
No, it all comes up. I mean, these tree roots are intact, so they just.
Are there other oaks on the property? Because a lot of times, especially with oaks, the root systems are shared.
Including with the neighboring.
Yeah. So if you open it up for.
No, there's one in the very, very back of the property that's far away from everything. That remains. There's no other oaks in the on neighboring property. All oaks are, besides the one in the very, very, very back corner, which is pretty far away. All oaks have to go because the lot's just so tiny. Yeah. Sadly, you can't say anything.
And you mentioned you've built before in the hills. And so is this house for yourselves a spec home? Does it already have fire?
Spec house.
Okay.
I assume you already have full POA approval
For quite some time now. That's why it's a delay. It's not just 2 more weeks. They're on job site cutting the log, and everybody walked off. They were told not to cut the tree down. Why did they?
I'll just say, Mayor, I had not kind of made up my mind before the meeting how I was thinking about this. I could kind of see both sides of it. I'm leaning towards supporting adoption of the ordinance and the temporary variance, really for 2 reasons. One, it appears to me from Mr. Koken's explanation this evening that the tree will be removed in such a way that there won't be any risk of oak wilt spreading on his property or to adjoining properties. And then second, the financial hardship that it sounds like he has incurred and will be incurring if we don't approve the ordinance at this time. I appreciate what the Mayor Pro Tem is saying about being faithful to the ordinance. I feel like the ordinance is there for a reason. And I'm typically kind of loath to want to waive them, but under the circumstances, it looks like the risk is low and the result of not approving the waiver would be a hardship to Mr. Koken, one of our neighbors. So for that reason, I think I'm going to support the ordinance.
Do you have somebody that you have regularly contracted with regarding just arborists going to review the site and potential oak wilt infection and anywhere in the area in terms of your lot or the neighboring lots? Because we have the opportunity also to impose safeguards for the prevention of oak wilt. So there's other considerations if people would like to impose safeguards regarding the variance.
Well, what about just following the HOA?
Well, my opinion regarding the POA is that, well, I think we all work well. Yeah, we are two separate entities. So, I mean, we are the municipality. We've got control over our ordinance, code enforcement. They've got their wheelhouse of building codes and things of that nature. So, I mean, while I'm sympathetic to the clarity of having two things that completely align, my perspective is they're still two separate governing bodies. Matt, Mary, do you have any last comment?
I don't. I think as it relates to Oakville, I guess I don't know enough about why the POA is outside of the architecture of the buildings and is being considered the authority over a city ordinance. I don't really follow that, but I need to learn more about that. So I appreciate the insight there, but as it relates to the city, we have to follow enforcement of ordinances.
Anybody have any other questions? All right.
I will just say again, I'm cutting and trimming. It's not removing. That's the word it's called.
I will disagree with that statement since we are not arborists nor scientists to evaluate how oak wilt is, how the infection starts and how it spreads, etc.
So, all the question?
Yeah, I guess that was a lot of discussion for so now we can move to, it's a very public question. We can move to approve the ordinance granting a temporary waiver of the city code of ordinances section 8.02.008 for the property located at 1 Glenway Court, legal description lot A, Hills of Lakeway, phase 4, the amended plat of lots 360-361, subject to city imposed safeguards for the prevention of oak wilt. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion denied.
Matt?
Oh, Matt.
Yeah, I
can't
I just can't really vote on this. I'm sorry. I'm going to let y'all handle that one. I can't vote on it. I don't know enough about what's been described as this discrepancy. So I'm not going to weigh in on that.
Well, his point on discrepancy is not part of the discussion.
Yeah,
sorry.
So,
Yeah.
You can abstain.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're free to abstain. Okay, moving on to item 4A, discuss, consider, and take appropriate action to authorize issuance of a permit for the temporary fireworks display at the Hills Country Club and any associated agreements for July 3rd, 2025, subject to approval of ESD number 6.
Motion to discuss.
Okay.
I think maybe if I may go first with kind of the elephant in the room. Not Josh. I'm close, but you know, a lot of my focus on this council and the welcome committee, Parks and Rec, everything I've kind of done outside the committee or the city has really been to try to make the community more fun and inclusive. And for many people, that means fun means more activity, more engagement with the club. For others, that means more engagement with city-funded, off club property events. To me, this potential event could have been an opportunity, can be an opportunity to bring these two groups together. I will say, though, that it's become such a seemingly kind of hornet's nest and so divisive that to continue to advocate for it is not consistent with me trying to make this a more fun place to live. At least not without tremendous support from Parks and Rec. And so yesterday evening, Parks and Rec had a special meeting where they voted on 2 items. One was the unanimous encouragement for a permit for the club. The other was a near unanimous encouragement towards funding the event, contributing to the event for up to a maximum of $6,000 with Parks and Rec funds. That's my piece. I'll leave it there for now, open to discussion.
I'm sorry.
Marty, thanks.
We also have Josh here from the club if he'd like to kind of run through your plans and kind of how you're contemplating the event, unless anybody from the council has any direct questions right now, but it might be helpful for Josh to run through.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I attended last night's meeting as well, just for some clarity. I think that, I got wind of some of the, some of the concerns and certainly understand them. I think that, Marty's been a bridge between the city and the club for quite some time now. We've been, worked together on a number of things. And I think that at the end of the day, when he came to us with the idea that, hey, we could do this, it hadn't quite been on our radar, right? We'd already pre-planned a July 4th pool party for that Friday. So this wasn't a situation where we were even anticipating doing a fireworks. Personally, I didn't think that, being a Lakeway resident myself, not a Hills, but that it would even be possible, knowing the history of fireworks in this community. But love the idea. I before I worked at the Hills, I worked at Austin Country Club and executed a very large scale similar celebration. Obviously, this one would be much smaller scale than that. We would do about 4,000 people down there, and it does take quite a bit of planning and execution. So my initial reaction when Marty had the idea was, it's too soon. We don't have enough time. But with the idea that it would be a really fun thing to do, let's try to vet it out and see if there's a way for us to do something that would be really fun for the community, but maybe wouldn't be on the scale that we would do at a Westlake or at an Austin Country Club, right? So we started to vet that out with our member experience director, Carly. The idea would be that we would add a music element, we would add kids activities, bounce house, face painters, things of that nature, things that we generally do and have vendors for already, that we do for our Friday night at Crossroads, things of that nature. Then we would add a programming element to obviously the clubhouse and other areas to create an event space, right? Then the question came to, okay, is there a company that could execute the fireworks show? So we vetted that out too. We came up with Liberty Pyrotechnics and Fireworks. I forwarded out some information to Marty that he's welcome to share with everybody. So some of the questions that came his way today about essentially fire permitting, things of that nature. This company works with the fire marshal and secures all permitting. They have a safety checklist. They have $1 million liability insurance policy that would, our club property would be covered by our insurance policy. The site and any liability and negligence would be covered by the fireworks company itself. Like I said, I forwarded all that on to Marty this afternoon. Beyond that, I think there was a concern about the safety record. So they forwarded on a safety checklist that they go through, along with a number of references from different cities, City of Hutto, San Antonio, number of other cities. I gave that to Marty as well. As far as so all of those questions, there are answers to. Is it a short turnaround? Absolutely. I fortunately do have experience in a lot of high-end, high-level, high-volume events. We've done them at the club before, Easter being one, other clubs. But I understand the concerns there. So as far as the comments about not having an expert that has done this, I am somebody that I wouldn't call myself an expert, but in this particular area, I have a lot of experience in doing it. If I thought we couldn't do it and do it in a safe way, I would say no. You know, I live in this community as well. Like Marty, and I think we talked about this at the Parks meeting last night. There's no denying the history of combativeness between the club and the community and all the different things. And we spent a year now really trying to reverse a lot of that, right? But, you know, there's past trauma and there's things that need to get solved. And eventually there needs to be a jumping off point. And I think, you know, even if we don't do this, I think the opportunity to partner with the city, you know, I'm not here to advocate one way or the other. You know, as far as the money going towards the club, I just want to go on record and say the club didn't ask for, but it's also an unbudgeted event. So the idea of sharing the cost of the fireworks, the club would also be putting $6,000 towards the fireworks. So it's really a partnership more than a subsidy. I think that it's more, we're going to put this fireworks show on together, and then the club also has increased expenses as far as labor goes, food, security, and all the different things that go along with putting on a large scale event. You know, not to mention golf course wear and tear, damage, things of that nature that we have to be concerned with. I know the cleanup piece was a big part, and the safety. I know that speaking to the company, they felt comfortable. There needs to be a 210-foot blast radius. So basically anywhere from the site shooting off the fireworks, 210 feet around would be a fallout zone. The company itself would be in charge of cleaning up that area. There would be a cleanup team the next day for smaller pieces that couldn't be found that might spread around that area, which is all but certain there would be. But we would have to put together a team to go clean that up the next day. Safe to say we don't want a bunch of cardboard and firework debris on or around our golf course either. So our golf course maintenance team and our outside services team would lead that. So I think that's the gist of it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to.
Can I ask a question?
Josh, so is the club's idea that all club members would be invited, or is this only for the residents of the Hills? And have you gone to Lakeway and the places that these other non-resident members live and ask for prepayments or money to fund the club event?
No, sir, we have not. The idea would be that it would be for all residents of the Hills community and the Flint Rock Falls community that live inside the gates. But any member of the club is welcome to use the club at any time they want. So yes, it would be open, but it would not be open to the public per se. It would be open to Hills members, yes.
How many members of the club are there?
Roughly 3,400.
Thanks.
Have you considered doing this at Flint Rock? They've got a beautiful area that was perfect for the Easter egg drop. Think that'd be awesome. See how their city and POA feel about ponying up some cash. And then you can solve the problem and not have to do it at the Hills.
Yeah, Andrew, sorry. So we've got, so technically the public comment period at the beginning is the chance to speak on any.
That was in the form of a question. He asked if there were any questions.
To council.
To council. Yeah, to council. Thanks, Andrew.
I would also clarify that Hills residents would be welcome to attend with this, money that the parks would be contributing, but non-resident members would pay a registration, paid admission.
Correct.
All Hills members are members of the club. It's a requirement.
You might know if I asked
Yeah.
that number.
Yeah. So, Josh, can you clarify where the concept of the Hills City Treasury paying $6,000
needed
came from? Where did that come from?
I got approached initially by Marty. Marty came up with the idea that perhaps we could partner on that.
So,
yeah,
so Marty approached you with the idea that we were going to pay the club $6,000?
No.
Marty approached the club. We asked on a party.
Yeah. So we asked the club, can you and would you guys consider doing the fireworks? They said, no, too short of a timeline, out of our budget, too expensive. Then I asked, okay, how much is it? What's the scale that you could do it at? And they identified a vendor that proposed a smaller show, which was $12,000.
But they told you that it was too short of a timeline?
They were skeptical, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Then they said we would also be to recover that investment, because it's not just the fireworks, it's, you know, everything that Josh said above the fireworks. They would charge admission and a registration for all attendees, including residents.
So why was that
That was
option? Why was that same option not afforded to the residents of the Hills to decide whether or not they wanted to pay?
Typically, and I'll summarize what the club has said, but I don't want to speak for the club, but maybe Josh.
I'm happy to.
Try. Well, I'll say that they've told me that when they throw an event like this, they start pre-selling months in advance. That's what, or I should say weeks in advance. That's what makes it feasible to have such an investment into an event. Obviously, we don't have timeline to do that.
Yeah. But fundamentally, all of the residents of the Hills are social members and have already, through the POA agreement, paid into underwriting events at the club. That's the whole concept of the social membership.
If you don't mind on that point, I just like to highlight on this. I don't think we're discussing the financial piece, but maybe we can.
Not yet.
Well, then, my commentary regarding that is that the Parks Committee yesterday reviewed the feedback of the community and they approved this event. And they already have funds allocated, that they have the discussion, the ability to decide how they want to spend those dollars. And it's only City Council's responsibility to decide if we want to agree with them or not, right? But regardless, those dollars would be spent on another vendor at some time and some place. Likely one that won't return any sales tax to our city. Here we're in a case where we're working with our largest local partner and one that contributes to us economically and offers the potential for ongoing collaborations.
As it relates to sales tax, will the club guarantee that we get $6,000 back from sales taxes?
I don't have the authority to guarantee it. I don't know what that looks like from a municipal level.
Yeah, your point is it's Parks Commission budgeted funds.
It is.
Right, yeah.
And they've
Okay.
selected,
I got
this
you.
is how they would like to
I
spend
got
the
you.
dollars. I just feel like if you look at the dollars spent, they go to a bounty of other vendors and no other vendor has gone through this much of a critical talking point, nor have we had vendors where we've had return expectations. So I just wanted to highlight that point.
I had a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Josh. I think you identified, was it Lincoln is the name of the fireworks vendor?
Liberty,
excuse me. Have they actually been out to the property here to look around?
we had a conference call with a GPS satellite video.
Okay.
So we spoke to the vendor. They have not been on site yet.
Yeah. Okay.
They would come out as soon as whether there's
Yeah.
a decision to be
Have
made.
they identified where they would produce the show?
So there's a couple proposed locations. I think the favored location would involve help from, as Tom pointed out, the PLA and some traffic concerns. The ideal spot from a visual, from a impactful position in our mind was the bridge on the Hills Drive that is right behind number 18 T-Box, right in front of number 17 Green. That area would be closed off from either side. That would give them the length and space they need. And then the impactful position of having the crowd on the 18th fairway with the lake in the background and all that stuff. The other idea, if that piece didn't work with traffic, would be to do it on the driving range and have them set up half the driving range or a little farther, and then have the group in the crowd, which is doable and it'd be great. But obviously not as much of a scenic
Gotcha.
backdrop.
And has Liberty or anybody else talked to the fire marshal, the ESD6 fire marshal, about feasibility of doing the show here?
I think that we've,
Yes,
Angie has. And
I have.
what they say.
They said the fire, wherever they buy the fireworks stick, will have to get a permit from them. And I asked him, would it be okay with feasible, safe? And if we need to get fire engines out here or anything to make it safer, he's agreement to that. So he says everything is good. They know wherever the fireworks that they buy the fireworks from, they know all the permits, they know all the safety issues, they know everything. He says it's an easy step.
I understand. So what I'm kind of hearing you say is that the vendor, fireworks company, hasn't gone to apply for the permit yet, but you've had a preliminary discussion with ESD6, the fire marshal, who believes it's feasible to do the show safely in the location.
He says there's no issues with it at all.
Okay.
Wahid has been involved too.
Yes.
Wahida, okay.
Wahida has been, yes.
Hold on. I have not seen, we're kind of talking around a lot of different subjects here. Let me just we have not seen the proposal from the firework vendor. I have not seen what you suggested you sent to Marty. I'd like to read a fire marshal report. We're being asked to vote to explode things in our neighborhood. And all of this stuff, I mean, they haven't even seen the site. How do we get to a point at which there's actually a plan other than a hypothetical plan in terms of where the fireworks are going to be launched? I'd like to read insurance agreements. I'd like to understand who's indemnifying whom, who's responsible for the traffic flow and the congestion. Are there dedicated LTFR assets to our community if we're going to place explosives in our community? All of this stuff, I think, needs to be reviewed before we can even vote.
I'll make a quick comment, promise. I just want to reiterate the premise here that Parks asked the club to put on an event, and the club, and I don't blame them, will not spend resources even negotiating contract with this vendor without understanding if they're going to get a permit. So a lot of these things I saw, I was sent a sample contract, which is completely, irrelevant to this discussion. It's not, it hasn't been negotiated. It was just a form template,
But we're not even close to voting, is my point, responsibly at least. Let us get to that point, and if we need to have another special session, I'm happy to do it. But until we can actually get permits, or we're deciding to place explosives in our community without even knowing where they're going to be, and it being inspected by the vendor, that I have not even, no one has anyone done diligence on this vendor and looked at their insurance policies and how they cover our residents?
Only me.
So how am I going to vote on that? That's the frustration I have here. And I don't know how any of us can vote on it. I think it's irresponsible.
I have one more question then, and maybe Josh, you're the guy for this, or maybe Marty. I thought Tom had raised a good point about the involvement of POA. Has anybody been in touch with POA? Because we do have, as I understand it, POA rules around use of fireworks within the community. Where do we stand on that?
I haven't. Imagine you haven't either.
I haven't yet. Up until now, it's just been kind of
okay. If I may, that would only be a roads issue. The club is not a member of the POA.
Yeah, right. The gates and the roads would be something that we would need cooperation with. If for that location, provided we could get that agreement, that location would be ideal.
Yeah.
If we could not get that, then we would have to do it, like I said, on our driving.
Understood.
Range.
And I may have misunderstood some earlier comments because I had the impression that there were some POA rules around the use of fireworks within the community, but I guess I'm hearing now that that's not the case. Is that right?
No, there is. The club is not a member of the POA.
Okay, I see what you're saying, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah.
Greg, so on the road situation, if they were to do it on that bridge, is that something the POA would contemplate allowing?
Because it is POA road, right?
Oh, that bridge is that bridge that who owns that bridge has been a separate discussion for a decade.
Right.
But I'll defer to Tom if he's still on.
And you own the road on the bridge.
Yeah, there you go. Tom, is Tom still on?
I don't think, yes,
Yeah,
he is.
I'm here. I mean, I think it's, certainly we have our board meeting next Tuesday. A lot of the stuff is clearly like a work in progress, understandably so. So, I mean, we haven't brokered that conversation with our board. Happy to do it on Tuesday evening. And I don't think that's going to hold up any decision here, right? But so I think the outcome of this will then dictate what the POA needs to assess, whether it's fireworks allowed in the community, wherever that may be, and then the road blockage and et cetera. So happy to review that with the board if it goes beyond this conversation.
And all I would suggest then, Mayor, is that if the will of the council is to approve a permit, that it be expressly conditioned on the POA being satisfied that all of its rules and regulations are being met with respect to the display. I don't think anybody who would be in favor of this would have a problem with that, but I'd like to make that an explicit part of any action that the council would approve on this.
Yeah. And Josh, I guess, would the intention be to continue with the event if we don't fund the 6,000, given it was a park and rec? I mean, what's kind of your perspective on that at this point?
So, like I was telling the parks yesterday, from a club perspective, like it was an unbudgeted event, something that came up, and for us is a worthwhile partnership to explore, right? And that was where kind of meeting in the middle and saying, hey, we'll fund half of the fireworks. At the double that price, the chances of us even recouping just the cost of the event, it wouldn't make financial sense for the club. So probably not. But it's not something that we might not consider down the road. And if that's the will of the council and of the community, I certainly, like, if we're trying to build bridges, right, and bring the community together, the last thing we're going to do is like, we don't care what the POA says, right? Like we would have to work with them and have a good relationship with Tom and I feel like a lot of the folks here. So I'm not here to say you should do it, you shouldn't do it. I'm here to say that if you want to do it and we want to partner, I'll give it my best to make it a great event. If the choice is, hey, it doesn't make sense for us to do this, I understand that too. But probably not be the answer to your question.
Yeah, and then just to I guess follow back up and clarify. So if we were to do this and we pay the 6,000, which is a separate item, but it's kind of intertwined, you would be charging. What would your process be for charging the non-Hills residents members? How would you guys kind of think about doing that?
The non-Hills residents, you mean like non-members of the club or
no, just non-Hills residents specifically. So Flint Rock, who live in Lakeway, technically, like
right.
things
so we would have to come up with a mechanism. What I've done in the past is, getting wristbands for purchase. Okay. You have to purchase your wristband ahead of time. Wear it. We would have to have a check-in point where you come through. Again, my idea, if that bridge was closed down and we only had one entry point, we'd have somebody checking for wristbands on the way in through the gate. Anybody who obviously lives inside the Hills gates will be able to get here by a golf cart, car, driving around, whatever. But you would have to have your wristband. Hills residents would get their wristbands in advance for admission. And then anybody from Flint Rock and or surrounding communities that are a member of the club, they would have to be a member of the club. Any guests would have to be a guest of a member and purchase the wristbands for a member. That would be my mechanism that I would propose.
I'd probably ask is there, can we amend the first business item to contain contingencies? That seems to be, is there a baby step that we can take that gives the club comfort to start spending money to really run this thing down? Because I think somebody said, a lot of this is theoretical right now, and we just don't have, actual things to review.
There's been a few comments here about, I'm sorry, I have to hop. Josh, there's already a partnership between the city and the club. We're a third of your members for the numbers that you gave us. We're a substantial amount of the revenue of the club. This partnership exists. Personally, I spend a lot of money at the club. So do the residents of the Village of the Hills. So there is a partnership with the club. As it relates to the club not wanting to invest costs to explore permitting, I find this to be, we can have another special meeting, in my opinion. I have to hop soon. I'll let y'all vote, but having a contingent approval when we're talking about a fireworks show 2 weeks away, I'd rather have another special meeting when the club has done the proper diligence and planning so that we can actually review a plan. That's where I'm coming from.
My percent, look, I think we could probably go ahead and take a vote at this point. I mean, I think that the other situation here is it's any associated agreements between the club and the Hills. So that includes indemnity and everything else, and us having legal counsel review all of those documents. So even if we were to approve, theoretically, if we were to vote to approve this permit, it would not authorize the club to actually do the fireworks until all of our requests would be satisfied.
So the motion be amended to allow a party to provide that permit approval upon the decision.
We can't, I mean,
If you would agree to that.
Yeah,
I
you
might
were,
propose that and I would clearly second.
and I think Marty was going to propose some amendments or modifications to the language that's in the.
Yeah, it seems like everybody wants to see a true fire mitigation strategy plan.
I would agree that there's be a fire marshal's authorization or okay. I don't think any of us are experts to interpret a plan or report. So just a general, the plain and simple statement provided.
Is that more than just the fire marshal issuing the permit to the fireworks company, or are you looking for something else?
Can we ask them for an opinion? Fire marshal?
No, I think what I would suggest right now, since the motion is on the table, is to, since you made the motion, modify the motion so that it would require the approval pending any of the items that we've discussed or that we would expect to see come across for the permit to be applicable and approved.
I mean, there are some options here. One, and I don't want to overly complicate this. I mean, one is we could, well, I was going to say we could have another meeting. I mean, I enjoy fireworks. I am concerned, particularly now discussing the road situation with the POA, that we would be jamming them, and it would not be, they probably wouldn't appreciate that, because I know that given we're, again, as iterated earlier with Mr. Hopkins, we're two different entities, and I don't want to jam them and add complications if we spend the next 2 weeks. I'd be worried we would spend the next 2 weeks evaluating this. We would invest, the club would invest money, and then we would have to call it off when we could, spend some extra time next year really evaluating this. I do think 100% that we need a better relationship with the club. And I think they've done a good job really reaching out and, you know, making attempts to be good neighbors. And I think that we should all continue that. And I think the Parks and Recreation Committee has done an incredible job of coming up with great ideas and wisely spending their dollars, which is why they have that allocated budget left. And I think that this is a great idea that they have, particularly since they'd like to, you know, just increase community engagement. My concern, and of course everybody has their own perspective, my concern is just the timing. And I would hate to spend legal fees on negotiating contracts, especially around indemnification over the next 2 weeks, particularly since legal counsel can be slow. And then we give everyone false hope or jam something up and rush it at the end. But those are kind of my perspectives. I do actually like the idea of fireworks, and I do appreciate the cross-pollination between the club and the Parks and Recreation Committee.
In my view, I think our two primary responsibilities in this case are interpreting the ordinance and how to apply it in the situation, just as we did previously, as well as upholding the fiscal responsibility of what the decision of the Parks and Commission. So my vote will align on those two main points.
So the part of your motion is to approve item 4A, which is the permit item, right?
That's the motion that's on the table.
Yeah. And we've talked about maybe making amending the motion to incorporate a couple of conditions. The conditions that I've heard us talk about would include having the vendor get an approved permit to conduct fireworks display from the SD 6 fire marshal. We've talked about getting appropriate authorization from the POA for any use of the roads or other POA property or other parts of our master declaration that would be part of this process. And then I think we talked about, Josh, I think you mentioned the vendor has a safety plan that they have they furnished that to you at this point?
Yeah. Yes.
And is there somebody appropriate that we could have review the vendor safety plan on our behalf?
Kelly Dial seems to know a lot about the subject.
Okay.
A resident member.
Hi, yeah, I was just for my background, I'm a television and movie producer, and I worked really closely with a bunch of different pyrotechnic companies, mostly out of Chicago, but I've already texted and communicated with multiple of them today, asking questions. And right now they're asking me like, well, what kind of shells are they using? Are they doing just ground effects or like, so all these technical things. So I could always send a proposal, and I'm close enough with them where they would share any concerns or any flags if that is interesting to you guys to do so. I mean, they're people that do the Super Bowl, so they're not like small fry. So I'm happy to, lean on those relationships if that's helpful. I don't know the turnaround time, but it's pretty fast. They've been responding to me all day. So
thank you.
And so, Meg and Tom, I don't know if this would be relevant for you, but I would like for the POA to see the vendor's, safety plan for the display as well, and make sure that the POA is comfortable with that. And from our perspective, Kelly, happy to have you review the vendor safety plan as well. And maybe that's something we could ask the fire marshal. Maybe Angie could ask the fire marshal if they would review the vendor safety plan and give us any feedback on that.
Yeah, it should be the fire marshal's purview.
Right.
It should not be like a regular citizen thing. Like they do this all the time,
Right.
so that they should be the final word on that.
And so those to me then, Marty, would be kind of the three sort of conditions that would tie on to item 4A.
And I would say, as well as on top of the safety plan, they provided a list of references, many of which were fire marshals in particular counties in Texas. I think mostly where they've done work in the past. So that might be something worth everybody betting out. I will say that, and look, no decision is would make it hastily. But, you know, another week or two, and we're probably past the point of, they won't pursue a permit until we secure the vendor, right? So we're kind of in that catch-22 at that point. So the Mr. Pratt's point, I don't know if that's, that's a council decision to make, obviously. Right?
So, Martin, just to kind of help the process, then I was going to propose a kind of a friendly amendment to your motion to approve item 4A to add those 3 conditions. That the vendor has to get a permit issued by the fire marshal VSD 6, that the POA has an opportunity to review and approve any issues under the master declaration that may affect the display one way or the other, and that we have an opportunity for the POA to review and for the fire marshal to review vendor's safety plan. Would that be an acceptable amendment to you?
I can get behind that. I would even add a review of the references.
I'm just not sure what we do with that, because I think we're proposing to take action on the item tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And so do we want to bring them, if we don't want to bring any references back to this body, how would you treat the references? Just satisfactory reference check or something like that? Is that the way you say it?
Sure.
How about this? How about we also empower the Parks Commission to conduct a review of the vendor's references, and make us a condition of approving item 4A, the Parks Commission's satisfactory reference check.
I think that's a great idea. So amend the motion.
Yeah. Yes.
You authorize the issuance of the permit, but pending receipt of the fire marshals
or conditioned on.
Conditioned
on.
Yeah.
Fire marshals green light, POA review and approval.
Yep.
Safety plan review
and approval, and reference check review and approval by the Parks Commission.
Yep. And reference check by the Parks and Rec Commission.
Second.
I mean, and any additional associated agreements can be included. Legal approval. Or legal. Well, because I mean, we're going to need. I mean, there's going to be agreement. I mean, there's going to be a whole bunch of indemnity agreements that we need to make. It's going to.
They're going to.
They're going to. Yeah, but we should just make sure that Josh is signed off.
Josh.
What was that?
The permit will allow this to happen. They have to agree to everything on here.
Okay. I just want to make sure our legal counsel.
Right, and that's when I get with Josh.
Going through.
Correct. He's the one that's gonna, remember, it's gonna be letter form and what needs to be done.
Okay.
Is it appropriate? Can I ask one clarifying question? And if I don't have the right to, I can pause. Can I just get the clarification for the whole group here? Is this truly limited to just club members? It's not open to any, it's effectively all Hills members, correct?
Sure, it would be open to club members and their guests. I mean, obviously, anytime you do one of these things, it's challenging from a security standpoint. We're gonna have to hire outside security, reach out to local PD and see if we can get support from them. But I mean, the chances of somebody sneaking into the community and getting a free fireworks show it's certainly there.
No, totally get that, and I appreciate that, Josh. I'm just looking at it from, if I go back to the turkey trot example, right, where that's really marketed to the masses, right? So where anybody can go. This is really going to be more intentionally directed to club members and guests, not the mass.
Correct. Yeah, not for the greater Lakeway community that aren't members of the Hills. No, we're members only club. So yeah, we would only reach out to our members.
Oh, that helps. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for asking that question, Tom.
I do think one of the reasons there's a couple of reasons why I do actually think this is beneficial for the club to be doing this. One is actually, and we discussed it when this idea kind of came up, is the liability issue. And it just makes it much more complicated with liability sitting on the city as opposed to the club and their vendor. And then if we were to have this as a Hills event for a Hills Park event, technically it would be open to anyone from anywhere. So that'd be the equivalent of a city of Austin, a bee cave. When Lakeway used to, they don't do their fireworks anymore, I don't believe, but when it would be open to everyone. So this does have the added benefit of protecting the city and keeping it smaller, or at least to the club, which the club has lots of events regularly, plus the city, you know, obviously people have said the Hills are club members, so it would actually be the equivalent of any other club event. So I think there's protections there that are definitely beneficial to essentially outsource this event from the city itself. Any last? All right, we can go ahead and vote on the motion as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That's 4A, right?
Yes, 4A.
Okay, item 4C, discussion and possible action to approve funding for approval of the Parks and Recreation Commission fireworks display event not to exceed $6,000.
Second.
Call the question.
Before we do that,
Yeah.
If we contribute then from the Parks and Commission budget, is there a way that we could co-brand this so that the city would get some kind of sponsorship credit that the club members would be aware of?
I think it would be fantastic to highlight the partnership between the club and the community. I obviously would need to take that back to John just to get final blessings. So he would have the final call on that, but I don't think he would oppose that.
Let's see our beautiful new logo right next to y'all's.
It would be nice.
And so maybe that's not an amendment to the motion, but it is some direction that we'd like to offer to our friends at the club, is that if the city is going to make a financial contribution, we'd like for that to be reflected in the sponsorship.
I don't disagree. Like that. I mean, it's a significant investment.
I'll say on this item, I think there's been a lot of conversation about my position on board, so I'll probably recuse myself from this vote. I don't want to add commentary necessarily, but city logos everywhere is good for me. As many as possible.
So Angie, at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, I know that this was brought up initially by, discussed and voted on. What was the vote at the Parks and Rec Commission?
It was 1 nay and the rest were all approved.
How many was that?
Let me think. It was Ally, Terry.
You don't need to say their.
I'm sorry. Dale and I.
5.
Was it 5?
It was 5, but I mean, that's
Jeanette.
76 people.
Mitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
6 approved, 1 nay.
Yeah. And this is out of their currently allotted budget. And the budget ends September 30th. Do they have any additional events planned that you're aware of?
Yes, they have a back to school event that they actually talked to the club about joining together with them for the back to school event.
Okay.
We put on a back to school event as well. So kind of
that was one of those redundant. That was one of those redundant.
Part of the discussion
events
that we had yesterday was that very thing that, hey, like putting some of those things together makes sense.
Yeah. So
And it saves on our budget too.
So they've expressed essentially almost they have expressed overwhelming support of the budget going to this item. Okay. It's kind of my questions.
I would just reflect my commentary to the previous discussion we had, where I made mention of, in this scenario, I believe it is best to approach it in an unbiased, non-personal opinion manner, and of such, with the Parks and Rec Commission already approving that they wish for the dollars to be spent in this direction. You know, we don't assess every vendor with such scrutiny that we have in this case, so just want to highlight that again.
No offense taken.
I mean, Lee, what's your experience, you know, having worked at the City of Austin for public-private partnerships in terms of, I think about this as partnership.
Yeah, I mean, the world I come out of, we're very accustomed to partnering with private sector organizations for a public benefit. And as long as the governing body determines the public benefit to such a partnership, that's certainly an appropriate expenditure of public funds, because there is a public purpose and public benefit to it. You know, in this particular case, I know the City of Austin has sponsored huge fireworks shows annually, and everybody and his brother shows up for those. And that's all public dollars, because there's a public benefit to bringing the community together, much like I think and I hope this endeavor would.
Any last questions from the council? Yeah, I mean, my perspective, I think that if this is the Parks and Recreation budget and this is how they've chosen to allocate it, and I think it's a valid reason to allocate it, then it's kind of my perspective is that I think that I would err on just with their perspective and just go with their suggestion.
Yeah, I'm kind of like mine, Mayor. I think we empower our Parks Commission to make these kinds of decisions, and then our review is, you know, is there a public purpose to the expense? And I think there clearly is here. And is there any other reason we can think of, either from a budgetary perspective or otherwise, not to accept the recommendation of the Parks Commission? I don't see one here. So I appreciate their thoughtful consideration and their recommendations to us. And I'm ready to vote yes on this item.
All right, move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. Any abstaining? Marty abstains. All right, motion carries. I think that's it for now. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special council meeting?
You know, I'll make the motion, but I did want to say something before we adjourned. Do we need a second for an adjournment motion?
Yes.
Second.
We typically do. I'll say this has been a kind of a long discussion, and I think in a lot of ways a very constructive discussion. I think it represents a nice opportunity for us to strengthen and build on our existing partnership with the club, and I look forward to that. And I'll say, I think everybody on the council was also very mindful of the commentary from our residents who took the time and the trouble to come into the meetings and to make their views known. And I guess the message I'd like to send to everybody in the community is that the council seriously and deliberately considered everything that everyone had to say. And I think the results that we came up with tonight were tailored specifically to address concerns expressed by our residents. And I feel good personally that the council has done good work to hear the residents and their concerns and to address those in the actions that we took tonight. So I thought this was a very productive meeting, very fruitful, and I appreciate being a chance to be a part of it.
Well said.
Thank you.
All right, move to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. It is now what time is it? 7:28. Meeting is adjourned.